If I could have one digital camera, which one would it be? For me, as you can tell by the title, it would have to be the Sony A7C II for 2 grand Australian, second-hand, no lenses, or the Lumix S9 for 2 grand with the 20-60. And yeah, I chose the Lumix S9 because I had the adapters for my vintage lenses and I had extra batteries and I think even a prime lens already at home. So yeah, I bought this brand new. I registered it with Lumix right away because I had my doubts about the build quality. So yeah, that was kind of the first red flag already. I had a S9 for almost a year. I had it with me all the time, but more often than not, it did not come out of my bag because I enjoyed shooting film during daytime hours more, and the lack of the EVF made shooting in the bright Australian sun quite difficult most of the time. So yeah, now we have our second red flag already. That it was lacking in mechanical shutter didn't bother me at the time, but I should have seen it as the third red flag right away. And not too much later, during a gig in an auditorium with very mixed lighting, I got an issue with flickering in some of the shots, and that basically pushed me over the edge to finally buy something else. When you just want a fairly portable full frame camera with a mechanical shutter, an EVF, and weather sealing in a decently built body, you have a very hard time finding something. The only other camera that could actually compete with it, I think, is the Leica EV1, but that's kind of a very different style of camera. We can talk about APS-C cameras in another video, but leaving the Lumix stabilization behind was already enough for me to not also lose full frame. My main interest these days is shooting photos for myself, mostly documenting the things around me, in my hometown or abroad. My photo and video work pretty much slowed down to a halt. I do love a good travel video though, so having video will always be another key feature a camera should be decent at. So finally, let's talk Sony, and is it everything I needed it to be? The short answer is yes. I never were that little interested in upgrading or switching to something else. Either I'm too jaded or the Sony just works very well for me. First up, it has all the basics. An EVF, yes, it is basic, but it really does the trick, and it's certainly better than having none. If you step down from a full-size camera, it will hurt surely, but you have to live with it. She's weather sealed, decently built. Like I said, I like traveling and only having one camera with me, so worrying about bad weather or even a boat ride in good weather or washing my face precariously while having the camera in another hand is just a piece of mind I need. The shutter is mechanical enough. It's just an electronic front curtain shutter instead of a traditional full mechanical shutter. I like a little feedback when I use my device. Having the option to use flash obviously might be important as well. The EVF is basic, the shutter is kind of basic, but let's talk about something that's not basic, and that's a 33 megapixel sensor, which is a nice upgrade of when you are used to 24 megapixels. Then also we have the Sony lenses and the E-mount, which is probably the biggest draw for the company. Also, Sony has probably the best battery life of all the major camera brands, and the biggest luxury as a Sony user is having decent autofocus, and I can move forward and back. I have never to worry if it will misses focus or if it keeps tracking me. Especially if you're on a budget, having the option of third-party lenses is amazing. For the longest time, I only had the 24 f2.5 Sony G lens and the Sigma 45mm. I actually only took those two lenses to Thailand. I will make a video about that if it's a smart thing to do, to take only prime lenses traveling. But yeah, if I would ever leave Sony again, losing the lenses will probably be the biggest pain point. Even though it is a jam-packed pro camera, you can hand it over to someone else in auto ISO and they will be able to snap a quick shot of you without messing something up. I feel like I could not have done that with many of the other camera brands, especially larger camera bodies which were pre-customized or a bit more daunting. Same with video, the options and features are a bit more limiting, but sometimes it does not have to be shutter angle to get a good shot. The camera has no soul torque. I don't know, maybe I'm just jaded that only an old analog camera or a $5,000 Leica camera can give me that feeling. But yeah, I think it's not different to any other black boxed digital camera that are around in that price range. And at least this one is portable and has an EVF. Of course, not everything is sunshine and rainbows. First and foremost, the stabilization sucks, especially if you come from Lumix, and that's mainly video talk. I can hold the camera up to my eye with the EVF, but that limits, of course, the shots you can get. On the bright side, the EVF is on the bright side, the stabilization is so weak that you at least not get any wobbles in the corners or some weird artifacts. I do not mess around with Catalyst Browse. I don't know, if it was integrated in my DaVinci workflow, possibly, but only if you would not lose the color space. And I think you lose something else if you convert your video. But yeah, like I said, I'm not faffing around with that. Yeah, you could actually leave it at already. Yes, the sensor is kind of slowish to read out, but that's kind of all the sensors in that category and price range, unless you go for the newer models. The build and handling maybe is not top notch, but it's really good. If it had a joystick and maybe one more programmable function button, or like the push-in wheels the Fujis have, that would be perfect. But yeah, a bit more metal, maybe without increasing the weight too much would be nice. But other than that, it's pretty flawless. To get me to upgrade, yeah, it would have to have a proper mechanical substantial shutter, not just a front curtain one. It could mess up your pokeballs, and your flash sync speed is not as fast as on a full-sized body or a mechanical shutter. But again, it's better than nothing. Video feature-wise, yeah, you're missing out a little bit compared to Lumix. But again, sometimes it's nicer to have a bit smaller menu. And to be fair, it's not something I really missed. The open gate or the shutter angle in particular. Even though, yeah, open gate made reframing a little bit easier. But yeah, that just means you have to put a little bit more work beforehand. And yeah, I never film anything vertically, so that's kind of the main reason to have that. Also, I don't use anamorphic lenses because I am preferring the small size. Let's talk quickly Sony colors. In my OG Panasonic S5 video, I said I chose a face detect Lumix because I wanted to learn manually focusing. That being said, the Sony is getting me back into editing my RAW files. Compared to Lumix, I often got lazy and just used the JPEGs because they were pretty nice right away out of camera. But yeah, it's kind of a good thing because I'm not leaving latitude on the floor there and getting me into editing more, which is beneficial in the long run. Looking into the future, even after a year since I bought an already 3-year-old camera, nothing new has been released that comes close to this one, I think. It actually, even the future releases, I'm quite worried about. Seeing that the Lumix L10 was recently brought out, I can imagine that the S9 II will just use the same body, which means I would lose already weather sealing if I would want to switch back. And yeah, it's barely an upgrade, I would say, unless it would get an S1 2R sensor. But yeah, that's a big if too. Nikon and Canon could release something small, retro-ish, that works well, but I guess that's a long shot. Plus you inherit all the negatives of those two brands, which with Canon obviously you don't have third-party lenses in full frame. And secondly, you would have to use a Nikon, which I was not a fan the first time around. So the only upgrades could only come from Sony. The A7C is probably the A7C3 is probably another year away, and of course that will be the better camera with a pretty good sensor, but that will also be overkill most likely and super expensive at launch or the first year when it comes out. The A7CR line is not really interesting for me, just because I do like the video side of things, and yeah, it would just be more expensive with a slight trade-off in video features or in video quality for moving things. If someone would dare to make a full frame camera with a great build, great EVF, maybe the 3-way tilt screen or just an old school flip out screen for me, I'd be happy and I would think of moving to that camera. Also, it would have to have a joystick and a proper mechanical shutter to be a worthwhile upgrade. Oh yeah, also it shouldn't be crazy expensive. That would be great. Otherwise, I am really content with this Sony A7C II, which is a nice feeling. Now I can concentrate on buying the lenses I really want or need, which I feel like I already have to with what I have so far. And yeah, if I buy more lenses for Sony, I'm probably switching away from Sony is going to be just harder. So yeah, tell me if you can think of another camera, or if you think I'm wrong in general. And let's see how this video will age when the new cameras are being released. Thanks for making it to the end, and cheers.